is money.
It's nothing.
Balling. Premium or nothing.
When them or nothing.
Now you know.
Now you know.
Now you know.
Now you know.
Welcome back to the Couch Chronicles, Therapist After Dark. Hi, ladies.
Hi, friend.
How you feeling?
Present.
All right. Well, hopefully I can get us even more into the present with our mindfulness practice for today.
Good deal.
We're going to do a little bit of a breathing exercise. So I'll ask that you get into a comfortable position. You can close your eyes if that feels good to you, or just take a little gaze. And we'll start with 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. As you begin to breathe in and out, notice the surface beneath you. Notice where your feet may connect firmly with the ground. Adjustments before coming into stillness. I want you to take your left hand and place it over your heart. Right hand over your belly. And we'll take 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth once more. Continue to breathe. Notice what it feels like for your chest to rise and settle. Each inhale and exhale. Continue to notice as you take a normal pace of breathing. Holding yourself in your heart with compassion. Notice where your body may connect. Any warm, cold sensations there. Close the practice with thanking ourselves for being present. Thanking yourself for having this intentional time to be in practice. Setting intentions here to move forward with your day. When you're ready, ending with one more intentional breath in through the nose and out through the mouth before gently blinking your eyes open. Alrighty. What did you guys notice about yourselves during the practice?
Grounded.
Okay.
I would say grounded. The deep breaths definitely help settle my heart rate a little bit.
Sure.
It wasn't until you say place our hand over our chest that I realized, like, oh, your heart rate kind of seems like it's going speeding up a little bit. But it was good to kind of the deep breaths, noticing how like it's decreasing my system is like really cooling down. And also the rising and falling of my chest. And I had the thought of like wanting to regulate that a little bit.
Sure.
But when you were like just normal breathing, and I kind of did that. And I also felt a sense of like holding myself. There's something about this pose that kind of felt composed.
Yeah.
As if I was holding myself. So I definitely Yeah, I enjoy that.
Okay,
Breathing.
so I'm hearing that it gave you an opportunity to find some comfort in that
Yeah.
holding of yourself, and focusing on your breath allowed you to feel settled.
Exactly.
Nice. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks, friend. What about you?
For the mindfulness, I think I was able to really just like follow along with the breathing, really
Yeah.
like noticing how like my stomach and my chest were rising at almost like a similar kind of like
Sure.
rate, because of when I put my hands on those places, I could feel them kind of rising at the same pace. I noticed that my mind wasn't really as active with any imagery or anything outside of the practice. I felt very still, to the point that when you like pull this out, there's like a settling, almost like a tiredness that I feel like I'm just really calm and everything feels like really slow. I did notice a few sensations of just like what it's like as my left hand was on my chest versus what my right hand felt, where the way it was placed on my stomach.
Sure.
So really just kind of noticing that experience.
Nice. It sounds like your body offered you quite a bit of a sensory experience along with that, and that helped you stay anchored. I didn't hear a lot of things outside of the practice at all.
No, yeah, I agree.
Nice.
Good
Thank
deal.
you for settling in with me.
How was your system, friend?
I was intentional about choosing this mindfulness practice because I knew that it was one that I could both lead and participate in. So I definitely had some intention in mind with choosing this practice, knowing that like I definitely was in need of some grounding, and hoping
deal.
that I could offer that to you all too. So
This
that
good.
was a part of my experience. I definitely noticed some different sensations in my body, noticing particularly how my hand felt over my chest, like
yeah.
just kind of like this heat radiating over my heart, like just feeling like very in tune with me, who I am.
Good deal. Well, this was good. This
Yeah.
was good. Thanks,
Yeah, I
honey.
definitely enjoyed it.
Let's get into it. We're
Let's
talking
get
about
into it.
some love, some limerence.
All
What's the
right.
difference?
Is it love? Is it limerence?
Right.
So let's read our confessionals and see. Milo, which stands for limerence object, was a girl that was in my class at university. I thought she was cute, but never talked to her. I eventually cold approached her after like 2 years of coincidentally having classes with her. Sorry, y'all, I'm having a hard time. Okay. Went on one date, which seemingly went well. She stopped replying after planning the second date. While in limerent, some of the creeping things I've done. Save close to 500 pictures and videos of her.
Okay.
Keep tabs on those in her circles, such as family, friends, all through social media and internet. Figured out where my limerence object lived from just pictures on social media and Google Street Views. After she moved back home from college, I went to the house she lived at and walked/drive past it occasionally. Keep track of every dream that I've had with them in it. I've been turned off to dating for over 3 years because I'm not attracted to anyone else besides my limerence object. Every week I go to the same city. Your faces are really looking funny. Every week I go to the same city, restaurant, parks that her and her friends post on their social media to feel like I'm with her while there. Every major decision that I have made since has somehow in some way been directly related to my limerence object. And I see limerence as a sickness that can be strongly tied to OCD and other mental health issues. I have no malicious intent and don't plan on using this info in any way. What do you all people do that is considered creepy or weird while in limerence?
Joe, is that you? What the heck?
Yeah. I very much was giving flashes of like, did you just like?
Yeah. All right. So let's start
wow.
for our audience who maybe not be familiar with the
Yeah,
term
like, what is that?
limerence. What is limerence and what is a limerent object? Stephanie, you want to go with it?
Yeah, sure. So limerence is a state or a feeling of deep infatuation that's either experienced really early on in a relationship where you have like established like contact or connection with someone. It can also be an obsessive feeling of attachment to someone that is unrequited. And that is, I think, more of what maybe our listeners and viewers are more familiar with. And this type of kind of obsessive feeling of attachment is involuntary. Like they don't mean to or want to or are trying to. They are just literally obsessed with this person. And I like that the Confessional said limerent object, because it is, you have to see that as like, instead of an object of affection, it is the object of limerence, the thing that I am limerent about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how does that get confused with I'm just in love with this person?
Yeah, or romantic attraction.
Or romantic attraction.
We're vibing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, would you like to take it or would you like me to take it?
I think that the difference there is that with limerence, you might find it, like Stephanie mentioned, like to be something that is uncontrollable and there's some compulsion behind it, right? Like it's something that you're doing over and over again, repetitively, even things that don't necessarily make sense. There was an example of something that they said, I'm like, no, why would you do that? How would you even have access to their friends? Like moving back to home from college, like knowing the house that they lived in, driving by, like those things that could bring you in close proximity with a person. I think that that differs from romantic love in the way that, like, of course we want to experience some sort of like validation and like and desire and longing to be around the person that we want to be around. But you're not thinking about it all the time. You're not like obsessing over it or feeling like you can't go on with your day or function without meeting that urge.
Yeah.
And also with love is a mutual agreement with the two people. So it's something that's kind of built and is committed. Where limerence is that it's not reciprocal and it's something that one person is actually seeking. And sometimes the limerent object does not even know that their attraction or there's a connect or there's a relationship there. So when you're comparing it to love and romantic relationship, is that so one of the things on top of what you add is the fact that it's not a mutual agreement with the two people, and both person are not necessarily in a relationship to build a romantic love relationship. So though our caller, like they had this one date and he fell through, but the other person didn't follow through, which would actually made them a limerent object.
Sure.
But I think that even the fact that the person didn't follow through on the date is actually what set up the limerence in the first
which
place.
made them
Because
the limerent object,
limerence is the desire to be desired. Like
Exactly.
that's really what the state is. You're obsessed with this person wanting you and you're uncertain, like, do they like me? Do they love me? Do they find me attractive? And that experience of not knowing is what makes you
Become so hyper fixated on it.
exactly so entangled and wanting to be like around that person. Another very key piece that comes with limerence is that it brings the person considerable pleasure in a short period of time. Like, and they literally, what brings them the pleasure is the thought or the belief that this person might actually like them. Not this person said that they liked you, not that they text you, not that they liked your pictures. And mind you, maybe they liked your picture, but then you made it into a story.
Into like, they're interested in me.
Exactly.
And they feel like I feel. And that's what
Exactly.
they seek for. So when they get in contact with that limerent object, they look for any clues or any gestures that person might do that kind of like signify, oh, there's a form of interest, or they do that. When we were talking about this, and when Stephanie's the one who brought this topic to us, is like I was telling you that the first show that kind of came to mind was the show You with Joe. Like, because if you looked at it, a lot of his victims, but a lot of it started in a limerence, where this infatuation and this obsession, where he would actually research where they live. He knew all their stuff. He knew where they live. He knew about their childhood upbringing, and he just knew everything about the person. And then noticed that at some point, especially the one that he ended up marrying, he ended up losing his objectivity, which is what kind of transitioned into it.
And so I think that kind of brings us to our next point around why limerence can be so powerful even after having minimal contact. You can go kind of years and years. It's like Stephanie mentioned and Judalyn, that it's kind of this longing or like constant seeking that is really the driving force there. The listener also talked about something that stood out to me around like their mental health, right? Like experiencing OCD. Limerence is certainly something that can show up in people who have challenges with attachment, trauma history, OCD, where you might find more like control-like behaviors. So I can definitely see how like obsessing over a limerent object can kind of fall into that category for sure.
And also, limerence, just so we're clear, is not a diagnosis or something that is in the DSM-5.
No.
It just shared the same characteristic as what Tyler just said, like OCD, general,
I would maybe classify it more as like a symptomology.
Exactly. OCD and separation anxiety type thing.
People of history of trauma, even some folks who have substance abuse issues, because it substance use alters, your brain and the chemistry. And so that could, especially if you're in some type of relationship around drug use, that would make the limerence a lot stronger. But I think I want to go back a little bit because like you said, the Confessional, they had said that they had OCD. Now, OCD is a mental disorder that is characterized by intrusive, unwanted thoughts. That's the obsessive piece, is the intrusive. It's repetitive. And you then do things in order to reduce the distress that thought brings on. Now, you see the difference between OCD and its traditional is that the unwanted, the distress that it caused. Someone who is limerent, more times than not, they focus on the euphoric feeling of like the what if. But when they don't get that requited experience back, there is a crashing, there is a emptiness, there is this feeling of disconnection and hopelessness that shows up, but it wasn't unwanted. And that's why it doesn't fall under being an obsession that would be characterized under OCD, but there is compulsive aspects to it in the fact that I do these things in order to have be in the space or get in contact with this person, which the Confessional wrote.
And it's also the addictive piece about it. The addictive behavior part of it is that when we crave something, part of addiction is the fact that my body and my system constantly want these things once I've gotten a taste of it. So when the limerent object even hint, or even the fact that they were able to get in contact to go on a date with them, then like we said, that's when he started. But it's the desire to
like an incentive.
An incentive. It is a dopamine of, okay, I want more. So the part where they get the pictures and they do all these things, it's a craving, and which is where the addictive behavior part kind of come from.
I wanted to tie also the piece about like people who is more likely and more susceptible to be limerent. And some of the literature and some of the research that I did said that folks who have an anxious attachment style are more likely to experience limerence than maybe someone who is avoidantly attached or securely attached. And I thought that was actually really on par, because what I have seen is that in order to stay limerent, there are activating strategies that show up that keep you in the state of
the state of it.
wanting, craving, and desiring the person, which are in the confessional, they said they would do things like thinking about like what their life would look like, you know, together, going to the places that they had just
visit.
been, and then kind of like almost using the essence of what they saw on social media to create a story or a narrative of what their life would be like. So there's always a lot of like imagery, visualization, fantasy that is involved in keeping up the obsession.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like it's very easy for someone who's anxiously attached, because activating strategies are very much a part of the attachment system to get closer, to feel closer, to seek that closeness to someone.
I also want to remind people, part of it, the attachment style and the attached system is the fact that attachment style are rooted out of our upbringing from whoever our closest person is, the anxious attacher. There was a severance in the bond that was yearning. It's a craving for connection,
Right.
and wanting to feel a sense of belonging and connection. And it's not to say that everyone who has an anxious attachment style will experience limerence. It's just to say they're more susceptible to experience that limerence piece of it.
Yeah.
And also acknowledge that if you look at the whole idea of limerence, of what we talked about, even when it first came to being, I think it was like in 1979 by this person, but it was the idea, like you said, the different stages of love that we experience and the yearning for connection, which is something that happens. It's
very
this thing
human.
that as humans, we crave that sense of connection. But imagine if that attachment wound is broken at a very young age, and where you get that separation anxiety, that feeling, that bond of like, wanting connection but not able to build connection, or people leaving, because the other part of limerence is the rejection and the downfall of it that comes, right? And how you kind of get in that stage of feeling stuck and not able to move. We can go on for years. And limerence does have stages.
And I was going to say that it does have
Definitely
stages.
have the different stages of where it starts.
And I think what you had said about the fact that like limerence, back when it was first named, was a term for romantic love. But now, after some more research, it's one of the stages that is needed in order to get to romantic love. You do kind of need to have a certain level of healthy obsession with your partner, like in terms of like, I want to be around them, I'm concerned about if I'm desired by them. But if you stay stuck in that and don't graduate to the other levels and the other stages, that's when it starts becoming abnormal or starts to become a dysfunction. So back to those 3 stages of limerence, you have the infatuation stage. This is where you notice the object of your limerence, where you start kind of creating a list of all their positive like attributes of like, oh, like they're such an entrepreneur, they're a hard worker, they have a lot of friends, you know, they have the best hair, like all of these like different things. Stage 2 is the crystallization stage. This is where you really start to get obsessed and the intense feelings really start to show up, where that kind of like, it almost feels like mania. You have a lot of energy, you're feeling like super pumped up and you're really excited to see them. And this is the stage where, like you said, people kind of get stuck for a long time. And then the final stage is the deterioration stage. And this is where the obsession or the idealization of the person wears off. You're no longer hopeful that they're going to like you or they're going to desire you. You just either you never actually get that confirmation from that person or that reciprocity, or you're not around them enough to be able to do, or I think you're going to say you get it. And what happens, Jay?
And then when you get it, it's not what you expected, because it's your whole fantasy and expectation of the person and what you created and the characteristic you create about the person. And then when you get to really know that person, and we saw this with Joe when he married the wife, which they both were in that limerence stage, is that they realized they were not compatible. They did not actually desire each other. You know, you don't really see this person being the person that you're with. So it can go both ways, where that obsessive with that person, those intrusive thoughts, It's the daydreaming, the stage
Sure.
before that, about the life you can have. And if you actually get it and it doesn't meet those expectations, there's a letdown, which is the last
the
stage that you talk about.
deterioration part that
Deterioration
comes
of
up.
it
Yeah.
that
Which then
happens.
I guess goes back to the question you had asked, Tyler, of like, what's the difference between romantic love and limerence? One, limerence doesn't care about your well-being. Like if you're a limerent, you don't care about like, oh, are they going to get a promotion? Are they eating well? Are they sleeping? I hope nothing bad happens to them. The only thing that you're concerned about is whether or not they're
Connection.
desired you.
Having that
and
desire.
then on top of that, you don't really know anything about the person for real.
Yeah.
Outside of what you have put on a pedestal.
Right.
So
Or
that's
the
the
person
difference.
that you have created.
In
I
your
think
mind.
this kind of also reminds me a little bit of the confessional from our attachment style episode for sure. Like just kind of being someone that is like, it could be anybody really.
Yeah.
You've kind of just created the person that you want that person to be and like have put them really up high on a pedestal. One thing that kind of stood out to me about this confessional too is just that, you know, while from the clinical standpoint, I definitely can empathize with the experience. Some of the behaviors that also go along with limerence creep people out.
Can
It
be
is-
very
it is
wild.
bizarre
Very wild,
to
yes.
think about like someone tracking you or having
Yeah.
hundreds of pictures of you or like visiting places that you've been. So yeah, what are your thoughts about that from a ethical and clinical standpoint?
How is that different
Now
from
we're kind
stalking?
of getting into stalking, yeah, which is illegal.
I mean, to be fair, that does fall under
yeah.
stalking.
Yeah.
Those things of like multiple pictures to going to the places that you've just seen this person go, hoping that you're going to kind of like bump into them in the places that you know there to be. That does
Yeah.
fall under stalking behavior.
I'm in agreement with that. And then also the obsessive part. Part of stalking is being obsessed with someone.
Correct.
The whole part of limerence is an obsession with that person, which fits into the OCD. So I think it's a very, especially in a world that we live today,
With social media.
where social media, I feel like that can be a limerence state. Though for some, it's that one person in dealing with their own internal battle, and it could be, and I'm using air quote, harmless. And it's a potential for it to cause harm.
Yes.
Because we live in a society where people actually are aggressive. People actually will get physical.
And people have
sometimes-
parasocial relationships with
Exactly.
folks too. So there's a lot of
So-
times where limerence, you don't even need to have gotten like in contact with the person or had the date canceled before they're like, oh, you're my person.
Exactly.
Yep.
So to me, imagine if that's not being reciprocated or there's a rejection of it. I think
Yeah.
it has the potential of being like volatile.
Yeah.
Or even
Yes.
threatening to the
Yes.
other person.
Do you guys remember on TikTok, there was this guy, I think he was a trainer, and he did a series of like videos about this woman who essentially like stalked him because after the first, I think she had signed up to do some of his classes or whatever. And after a couple times, I think he canceled it because she was acting weird and she literally would not leave him alone. She would pop up at places.
Yes.
She would call him all the time, send him things. And it, at first, like it felt, enjoyable, flattering, like, oh, like this person. But then after a while, for someone who doesn't accept or embrace the limerent person's love, it starts to create anxiety and
Sure.
paranoia,
Yes.
and like your system starts to feel hypervigilant. Are they going to
Sure,
be here
that feels
now?
like a threat.
Are they going to
Yes.
show up
Yeah.
here now? And
Yes.
so I do think that it's something that we want to like distinguish between is if you stalkers or people who have the urge to stalk more times than not probably are experiencing limerence, but that just because you experience limerence doesn't mean that you will fall to stalking.
Right.
So that's something to say is I think like people who stalk probably are limerent to some degree, but just because you're limerent doesn't mean that you're going to stalk
yeah.
people. But what if that person stepped into our office and spoke to us about their limerent urges? How would you guys address them as a client?
I think I would just definitely need to know more, right? Like I definitely gathering information and really understanding the behaviors that kind of lead up to when they're participating in the stalking part. Like what crosses from like this is something that I'm just thinking about or an urge that I'm having to you actively getting in the car and going to this person's house.
Yeah.
Or like you actively and also kind of helping them to identify with like what is the function of this when this is done, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out that a lot of these behaviors also lead the anxiously attached person further away from attachment. Even though like it feels like this is giving me an opportunity for closeness, saving hundreds of pictures of people, like that will ultimately result in like people isolating you, being disconnected.
But I mean, that's
from
if
it.
they find out, though, because that's another thing. We're taking it from the perspective, because I even noticed that our responses are coming from the purview of us trying to protect the person who is being obsessed over. I want us to take a slightly different perspective of like, what would it be like if your client came in and said this without you trying to...
So here's what and I want to be realistic here.
Yeah.
I think for any clinician, this will be a tricky case to
Sure.
navigate,
Yes.
period. So I think it's the same thing when you're dealing with someone who's tested a molester or something, when you're dealing with someone who caused harm. I think it's going to be a very fine line, which is sometimes with our ethical code I struggle with, especially with the duty to warn.
Yes.
Because duty to warn literally focus on intent to hurt. It doesn't cover, obsessive stalking and so forth and so on. So I want to be clear that it will be an interesting case to navigate. And to Tyler's point, is exploring the function of it, how often and how much is it taken away from their life and their values. So I will
exactly.
go back to reconnect the person with, I think what wound that was broken for you, and also what are you seeking? And because it's about connection.
Yeah.
And really reconnecting the person with that, but it's going to take some intense work. But I think immediately is observing as a clinician, is there an immediate threat to the client or to the person if it becomes to disrupt their life in the person's life? So I think that would be the first assessment that I would do. And also going back to figure out like the root where some
where
of
did
it
that
started,
come
what's
from?
missing, what is the brokenness around feeling like that, feeling the way that you feel. Because I think there is a sense of I'm not desired or I'm not wanted that is attached to limerence when they talk about that. So I think it's exploring for us their own idea of how they view themselves and how they view themselves in connection to the world, and which is what makes it different. When we love someone, we love in a connection to how does that person and me are in alignment with how we connect to the world. Where limerence is focused on how do I connect to that person. So that's what differentiated between that and love. So I think realistically, as a clinician, it will be a tricky case to navigate, and to also look back to the fact that this is a human who had a human experience, and there's a root and a cause, just like we talked, to why this behavior exists in them. And and being aware of what shows up for you in your own judgments. Because I am the kind of therapist who would share my judgment automatically with my client to keep it real and being honest. This is how I'm experiencing you in this moment, and it's just my thought, and how does that make you feel? And how can I serve you? Sometimes it is a sense of being real with yourself and taking it to the side around like, okay, am I looking at this person as they are, or am I having my own
So
sense
consultation is definitely going to be
exactly
is going to be key, because I mean, for me, I'm wanting to approach it clinically as if they have OCD. And so I would take it from the perspective of like exposure and response prevention. And so it is asking clarifying questions and curious questions around the ways in which they give into their urges that are triggered by those thoughts, right? So it's like you'll have this thought of, I wonder what Joe is doing, right? And so we notice that thought is the beginning of the
That's like the activating point.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Like that's the starting point of you then starting to do. So when we notice these thoughts, let's see if we can sit with ourselves without following through on all of these additional activating strategies or all of these different ways in which you can pulse around this experience.
Yeah.
And so that it helps reduce the anxiety, the whatever experience that they have, that they use the compulsion of like searching on them online, going to the park or the
places where they are,
the
their
club that they
homes.
went to, or things of that nature. So I would take it from that perspective of
So
doing.
it's interesting that you would take it from that perspective, because the way I took it was from the perspective of the separation anxiety.
Sure.
Because I don't.
But it's good. I think this is the part where can do a diagnosis.
No, definitely. But
I'm
I
about
said
to
I
say.
don't really agree 100% that limerence comes from the fact that like because of connection. I do agree with you that it has to do with feeling a lack of desirability and having maybe a sense of like low self-esteem or like low worth. Because the thing around being feeling highlighted or feeling lighting up at they might want me.
yeah.
And it made me think about like maybe a kid whose parent, mom or dad, was not there. And they would just think about like, I wonder what they're doing. I wonder if they miss me. I wonder if like they care about like what I'm doing today and things of that nature. Like I could see that being developing and growing
like catapulting them into that
a
limerence
kid
adult.
who an adult who then is obsessed about like, will this person want me and desire me? But then as soon as I get it, it is kind of like
a letdown.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I got it, but it's not. There's a wound.
It is
in
not
there.
fulfilling the when you go, it's like when we talk about we go look for what the intercedent is, but the reward is not meeting
Yes.
It doesn't
the
match.
need
It's
of
like
that,
very
the reward.
anticlimactic.
Exactly.
Like, we've done all this build up and
Exactly.
anticipation, and we get here, and it's like
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal.
What are your thoughts about how to support clients or when they're sharing things with us that maybe are really teetering on like the law, right? Like, so we talked a bit about stalking, but what if, the client insists that they don't have any intent to harm, but the behaviors that they're engaging in could perhaps very easily lead to some sort of harm, like you said? Do we have the duty to report? What does that process even look like?
I feel like I would follow through with the duty to harm if then there's an uptick in homicidal ideation, language,
being paired with
talk,
other
and things of that
things.
nature. If we're talking about our character from you,
Joe.
right? If I was his therapist and he started to shift in his language, because you guys know from watching the show, Joe very much engages in the limerence
All the
stages, with the exception of he gets to deterioration because he kills them. But like that's literally what it was, is that like that's why he no longer is obsessed with them, is because they have either confirmed to him they do not want him, and that is so devastating and so unacceptable to him that he has to just smooth take them out, or he got with one of them and
it wasn't what he
and it was
what he
again another
anticipated.
like letdown type of thing. So if I was seeing him and he started to become more erratic, right, his behavior, he starts to engage in very harmful, destructive things, or starts using very hateful language toward
towards
the
the
object
person.
of limerence, that's when we start to now looking at the safety plan. That's when we start looking at like who to inform in order to ensure that the other person is going to be okay.
Yeah. And always review, your confidentiality with clients
Sure.
and when to break it.
Sure. I do think that like sometimes like the idea of mandated reporting can sometimes be based in like it can be framed to us as clinicians, like how do you cover your own ass, and not so much in like how do you like establish safety and commitment for your client, and like in this particular case, like for the other person who could potentially be harmed. And I think that kind of takes away from how people use reporting effectively.
Agreed.
That's
Because
true.
there are things that will definitely come up when you work with clients who have severe stuff going on.
Yeah, agreed.
There are things that will come up that make sense to report for the sake of safety.
Yeah.
But it kind of gets wrapped up in the like, I have to report this, or like, is this happening? And there's no like follow up around how do we close the loop with the client around like getting them to a space where they can behave and engage in society in a safe way.
Yeah.
And not just like reporting. So like, because I'm supposed to report to keep my license.
Right.
Yeah, I think as you say that, a couple things flash through my mind. First, I think about like the Menendez brothers and how like the therapist or the counselor was very like integral in them being like prosecuted and what that whole process was like. Then I think about what you had said about like being very upfront about your judgments or, you know,
How you
your
experience.
limitations.
Yeah.
I would then go to further to say that like, I'm going to tell my client, hey, once you start saying or making statements that make me assume that we're moving in this direction, this is the
steps,
protocol,
like
this
Jay
is the
said.
process, this is what is going to happen.
Exactly.
I'm wanting to protect you and I'm committed to you first, and I'm also committed to the safety of other people that you are in connection with. And so if I hear or if I see your behavior shifting in some of these ways, I'm going to bring it to your attention. And these are the follow-up things that I'm going to do as a way to both cover myself, but also let the client know these are the parameters,
steps.
these are the limitations,
navigate.
and then you have the responsibility to choose how you
navigate
move.
around that. I think that really like is a reminder to take, it's not just some shit that we put on a piece of paper
Yeah.
to find consent.
Agreed.
Like this is
Yeah.
like a real life action step and a part of the therapeutic process. And so like I like that you and Jay mentioned like the reminder of that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we talk about confidentiality at the beginning, but that can be something that needs to come up quite frequently when your client has things that are going on that could potentially intensify. Like just a reminder. These
Yeah,
are
because
things
also,
that I'll do.
it could also their own sense of self-harm.
Yes.
Because limerence can actually lead to some suicidal
Sure.
thoughts and wanting to hurt themselves if they're feeling rejected or didn't get the response that they expect.
Exactly.
So really, they could show up in the therapeutic space, you know, wanting to self-harm themselves and wanting to have suicidal ideation, where you said a plan would go into action and leaves the opportunity to open all the wounds around that.
Exactly.
And then it might communicate to the client that, oh, if my therapist is picking up on some things from me that's making he or she feel like things need to escalate, oh, maybe I have reached a certain
threshold.
like
I've-
line,
yeah.
right, that I need to reconsider. And so it kind of helps put that proverbial stop sign for you
Yeah.
and, you know, the
Yeah.
person that you're working with.
Yeah, I think sometimes clinicians can sometimes feel like bringing it into the space can create a barrier for clients being honest. But I think at the end of the day, it really models the type of honesty and like non-performance that I'm looking for my clients. I'm going to be upfront with you about how I'm experiencing you and the things that I can do to support you moving forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Something to also think about, a clinician have to know their judgment.
Yes.
I feel like
You have to be firm. Have your
I
wits about
feel
you.
like a lot of times clinician would get in the way of treating a client like this for a
Yeah.
lot of clinicians
Yes.
that I've been exposed to.
Oh,
Is
yes.
that their own sense of judgments, how they feel,
Yeah.
their thoughts about what the person is doing, and having judgmental words to even describes it. I think that can get in the way of treatment.
I mean, this is
So
a
be
perfect
very mindful.
counter-transference
Exactly.
like case.
Yeah.
So
like,
be
for
very
sure.
mindful of your judgment when you seriously treating somebody like this.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
for
yes.
sure.
Okay.
For
Any
sure.
messages that we have for our listeners about just self-awareness and mental health in the context of like, you know, obsessive love, limerence?
Right. Well, I think that a couple things to talk about. If you notice yourself in a limerence state or feelings of limerence, I think it's holding yourself back and really practicing some mindfulness around what's showing up. What am I seeking? What is the connection I'm seeking with that person? And what is the healthy state around, is this, if I'm obsessive and I'm constantly thinking about that person and I'm doing a lot of daydreaming about what life will be with that person, I may need to take a step back and want to evaluate like me, or I may need to talk to somebody to figure out where I'm at. Yeah. If you're a clinician who's dealing with that type of client, we just said, notice your judgments around treating that client. But to Stephanie's point, figure out what angle you're going to really treat the client. Exactly. And also really pay key to attention is, am I in love? Which is a mutual agreement. Or am I in limerence? Really noticing the difference between the two of them.
But I think another thing to think about is like the I'm in love part really fast, is that like, if even just, do I love this person? It doesn't necessarily need to have the other person involved. But it doesn't need to be a heavy, all-consuming, black or white type of experience. Exactly. And that's where you really need to like draw the line, because a lot of what I looked up, once people identify or say that they are being limerent, that usually breaks the spell, and they immediately drop to the deterioration space. Exactly. So like sometimes just naming it is enough to shift things around. The second thing is to normalize and be kind to yourself, because that's where it goes from, like I'm hyped up on this person, to like the biggest drop because I'm now being super judgmental of like, that's so crazy for me. How could I, like all of this other stuff. So really normalize that there was a desire to be looked at, to be wanted, to be lusted after, for someone to be attracted to you, and let me find more healthy, realistic, mutual ways to get that.
Okay.
All right. Do we want to have our listeners' letter?
Yes, let's do that.
We've been dating for like 2 months. He's really sweet and spoils me. He told me he had a surprise for me and decided to take me to a Jehovah meeting. I told him I was thrown off, but he said that he loved me and wanted to share that part of him with me. That's fine. However, I'm still irked and feel something is off, and I just can't let it go. Yesterday we hung out, and when I brought it up again, he shut it down. He somehow makes me think that it's nothing and changes the subject. I don't even notice it. I don't want to be nagging, but I still am not satisfied. My friends say I'm overthinking it and ruining a good thing, but I can't let it go. I'm still upset that it happened, but I don't know if I'm overdoing it. I promise you I'm not discriminating against his religion. It's just weird. The whole thing is, honestly, am I overreaching? I'm not confrontational. I just need some advice.
Okay. I think it seems like his spirituality was something that was important to him.
Yes.
Though in the beginning, it seems like they talked about the goals, the values, I think is what she's saying.
Yes.
And there's some information I feel like that is lacking that I would like to know is around the fact that, did he say he was Jehovah? Like, did he talk about how he wanted you to kind of be inclusive in that? Yeah. Or did you have an opinion about it? If those things were not mentioned, then definitely I can understand why you would feel caught off guard and just uncomfortable. If they were mentioned, but you weren't told that's what you were going to do, there is a form of deception that's there, and also acknowledging the fact, well, how am I really feeling about this community and being part of this community that he strongly have talked about before in the past. So it's a both and factor around the fact that nobody would like to be caught off guard. Don't make me think we're going on a date, but I feel like if you're going to any spiritual meeting or religious meeting, you should let me know, because I could have wore something crazy and we're going to a Jehovah meeting.
I also think the
Or a thing.
curiosity that you talked about earlier,
Yeah.
I had a lot of curiosity too around how she is also shared like some of her spiritual or religious beliefs, right? Like, is this someone who is, like does not practice any religion at all and has been clear about that. And then this was like, we popped up here. I would want to know more details about that. And also wanting to know a little bit more around this person's history as well. Like, do you trust yourself?
Exactly.
You had some feelings about it. And you're looking for advice from us and your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
You need that confirmation. When
Yeah,
it seems like you already
feel
have your
weird about it.
confirmation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a fear at like addressing it a little too harshly,
Sure.
or maybe like not understanding where he might be coming from, because I like the question that you posed around like, what is your history, but also what's not only that, like what's your history with religion and spirituality in general? Like,
Yeah.
are you someone who has been
Religious
raised,
trauma.
has religious trauma, but has been raised with a specific
belief.
practice and a specific exposure, and so you have certain biases around other religions, or you yourself are someone who practiced but is no longer practicing. That is important for you to know. And if you are worried about addressing this with this person because you're not comfortable, that might be an indication of your level of like safety and security in that relationship, right? Like if he has given you messages that make you seem like he wouldn't be open to you not wanting to do that, or maybe you wanting to take a little bit of time to like get into that space, then that is probably a bigger issue to be addressed than he just randomly took me to the Jehovah Witnesses.
It seems like there's
meeting.
something else that is underlying there, right? And perhaps that's the thing that is bringing up this weird feeling that maybe even if you had a good time, you could still be kind of thrown off by the idea that there was some miscommunication, there was an omission of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And just last around, it didn't seem like they were threatened.
No.
That like the person that they're dating is threatened. I think it seems like this client is anxious and doubt themselves, and approaching and having a conversation seems like something that they fear, and not that the person necessarily brought about that environment. Because they said that when we met and and so forth and so on. But I also think seeking your friend's validation is also the fact that you already feel some type of way.
Yeah, that's what I'm
about
like.
it.
So most times if I'm coming to my friends about it, I've already locked in.
Yeah.
But also maybe this girl doesn't have that much worldly experience outside of like her family and her cocoon. And so she's asking the questions from her friends because she only has one path that she's walked, and she just wants to see, have you guys experienced this as well
There's some
too?
uncertainty.
Like,
Well,
is
they
it?
said they believe that she's sabotaging based on what she said.
Yeah, that's the friend.
So she's walked a couple life, it seemed like.
Okay, well,
I just didn't want to
stand corrected.
Yeah, that I would be curious about that as well, right? Like what is the history even with that language of like you're doing too much. Like there was a lot of that. So I'm very curious. So yeah.
This was good.
Yes, Love and Limerence. Definitely exploring more about those connections and relationships. As always, I feel like this is always like one of our favorite topics.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. Yes,
Yes,
it is.
understanding of that. But all right, folks, we have enjoyed talking to you guys about Love and Limerence. Please like, share, subscribe, as well as send us any more listener letters, any more confessionals, any more of your side stories about being limerent. You can contact us at Couch Chronicles, TAD@gmail.com. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. So follow us.
Yes.
See you next
Bye.
time.